Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to take a look at a couple new marker sets that you might be interested in because I think they're a little unique. So we are going to look at them today. They are the Arrtx Alp marker sets. This is an illustration I did, this drawing of my daughter. I snapped a photo of her one night during the winter. She had a little hat on and she was just about ready to go, I think, ice skating, and I just thought it was so cute. So I took a photo of it and I used the markers to color that. I sketched it with a pink colorless pencil, used the markers primarily for the grays and the skin tones. The grays actually worked really well with the skin tones for some of the subtle shading. And I did do a little bit of Prismacolor here and there just to kind of soften things, but I wanted to get that illustration done because A, I wanted to do it anyway as soon as I took that picture, and B, I wanted to take a look at how these skin tone markers did. And we're also going to compare them with some other popular, easy to get skin tone marker sets that are out right now because, well actually I can compare the gray tones too, because I know it's really hard to find a good skin tone set depending on the types of skin tones you want to do. So I did this on some drawing paper. It's not like your slick, your typical slick thin marker paper like the Arrtx marker paper is. I wanted to do this on more of a drawing paper because I wanted to be able to layer and blend and have it absorb a little bit. Working with these, they were great. The tips are a little hard. They are the Arrtx Alp style marker. So we have a pretty fine hard bullet tip, and we have a chisel tip, and they're triangular barrels so they don't roll off. You've got, there's no naming on the barrel itself, but on the caps you have numbers. Now the Arrtx markers come with a color chart, which is kind of neat, because usually your markers don't come with a color chart, or if they do, it's already pre-colored. This one has a hand color chart. So as I was coloring these charts in, because I didn't really notice anything with the numbers, generally I'll kind of look at numbers because sometimes with the less expensive markers, the charts will be, the numbering will be very similar, and you'll be able to say, oh, they're using the same numbering system as Shinhan, or as Ohuhu, or as, you know, this brand or that brand. So you can kind of figure out, you know, what, you know, markers are going to be the same as other ones. So this is what the box looks like of the, let me close it up so you can kind of see it in all its glory. This is how the, why does it want to close? There we go. This is how it comes. This is how they're packaging their Alp markers. So it's in a beautiful case display box here. It's got a little belly band. This set has 36 in it. The numbering, the naming conventions of the set, this is 36A, which is a skin tone. The, and I think the A just stands for Arrtx or Alp, maybe. The, gray says 32A, and then their first set, their kind of flagship set, it just says 80A, and my box was damaged when it came to me, but I got a media on the media list, so I got the pre-release before it was ready for sale, and it came all the way from their factory, so I don't fault that. I don't think anybody else has had a damaged box that has purchased them. But I like it because all of the cases turn into display, so you can set these on your desk and be able to see all the ends of your markers and keep them fairly horizontal. The numbering here on the original markers was very customary, like wine red number 1, you know, number 2 old red, or I don't know exactly what, I can actually look here. But they are names and numbers you've probably seen in a lot of the inexpensive markers that have come out recently. Am I out as far as we can go? So when I tried these out, I kind of got what I expected. I didn't find the caps to be very good matches. And, I mean, they worked good. They were fine. They were, you know, standard run-of-the-mill, less expensive markers. They were probably the only ones around with a triangular barrel, except for the Arrtx's, but these are a little bit smaller, so a little more comfortable for some folks to hold. It just comes down, I think, at this point to a matter of preference, because the prices are very similar. I think this one goes for about between 40 and 50 bucks. I could not find the new sets yet online. They generally sell through like sites like Amazon and probably AliExpress, you know, the marketplace type sites where people can list their products wherever. But I did like the packaging. These packages came in perfectly, and I did have these out sitting on my table like that as I worked, and it was really nice to have them like that. So what I noticed on these markers is that they went with a different numbering system for the skin tones. They all start with in the 300 series, and there were two markers here that had the same names as markers from their original kit. One was Barely Beige, which was a color match as well, although the numbers weren't the same, but the colors were the same. And then there was one called Peach, which was not. So let's find Barely Beige right there. That was the only one that was a color match. Peach was more like a hot pink or like a opera pink in the original set, and it's more of a softer pink here. So while I was looking at this list and looking at the names, I noticed that some of these names sounded really familiar. Like, I've got other markers with those names, and that, that happens. But what I didn't expect was that the names they matched and the colors they matched to those names were Copic colors. So it seems to be the colors that are in this set. Let's see, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 matched the Copic colors that I had of the same colors. Now, I don't have a huge Copic collection. I don't have all the colors. I have a handful of the earth tones because that's what I was most interested in for doing like skin tones and stamping and stuff. That's what I primarily got into markers for, was coloring stamped images, not for like doing drawings with them. But I was really surprised because like the chamois in Copic is an exact match for chamois in Arrtx. I had some Prismacolors with similar names. I had a light walnut and Prismacolor. The color was not a match. And I had a fruit pink like in actually the old like Touch New. No, that's a Hoodoo. The old Touch New markers, which I have right here, that was not a match. Their fruit pink was not the same as the fruit pink here. But all the Copic names matched the Arrtx names, and there were most of the other colors, maybe all of them, I was looking at my Copic app, all showed up in the Copic app as Copic colors. So the neat thing about that is that if you wanted to, you could refill them with the Copic inks. Just go by the names of the skin tone set, not from the other ones. I didn't notice any sort of correlation with the original 80 set, but with the skin tones, it seemed to work. And something else I was interested in, I do not believe you could put a Copic nib in this. I think they're not the right size. Maybe one of their jumbo ones, but I'm going to grab some nibs really quick and take a look, though, because I am curious. I have a few different brands of nibs. I don't have all the nibs, but I have a few different nibs. And I think I'm going to tip my washi tape over again. My gosh, I knocked over all my washi tape. But I'm thinking the Art and Fly markers might be similar in size, and I might be able to, yes, I think I can use an Art and Fly nib. Maybe. Maybe not. Let's see. So I'm curious if I can take an Art and Fly nib. I don't have any spare Copic brush nibs, but I'm going to try this. These Art and Fly nibs are also a little bit cheaper than Copic, but I do find them to be very comparable. So I'm going to pull out the chisel nib here. You know what? No, I'm going to be smart here. Instead of being foolish, I am going to use a colorless blender to do this. Now, this set has 34 colors and 2 colorless blenders for the skin tones. We're going to get to the gray tones too, but the skin tones are more interesting, I think. All right, so let's try the colorless blender. So, I've got 2 of those. So I'm going to pull out the... Hey, look at that. Hey, that's in there secure enough. Okay, so you can definitely use the Art and Fly nib. Let me look. You know what? I do need to replace my Copic blender nib, so I'm going to actually grab that one and see, because I'm not going to be out anything if I ruin the Copic brush nib, because I need to replace it. It's broken. See? Oh, look. See, you can see. Let's see if I can yank that out of there. Shoot. There we go. You know what? That might work. It fits in there. Hey, you know what? You could get Copic nibs or Art and Fly nibs and use them. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and put that Art and Fly nib right in that Copic. Oh, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to put it in my Copic, my Copic one to see if that fits. I find the Art and Fly ones are a little long. I don't think they want to fit. No, see how the Copic ones are shorter? Look at that. So you can use a Copic nib in your Arrtx marker. You could use an Art and Fly nib in your Arrtx marker too. Honestly, I would go for the Art and Fly one because look at the spigot on there. It's a little bit closer to the length of what you need. So there you go. If you want to replace your nib on your on your Arrtx marker, get the Art and Fly nibs. I think it's like $5 for 3 of the brush nibs, and they are the super brush nibs. They are wonderful. They're very comparable to the Copics. They have that rubbery, non-fraying tip. So definitely, that's awesome. So you could definitely get a Copic quality marker for next to nothing. I'm just going to pop this in here for now because I need to get some Copic, some spare Copic nibs. They're so darn expensive though, so I'm in no rush to do that. I have an Art and Fly clear blender I can use for the time being. I'm just going to leave that in there so it doesn't dry up. I can use a chisel. I tend to actually use a chisel head more than the brush end on my Copic blender anyway. But that's really cool. I'm so glad I tried it. I hope that wasn't boring, but I just was like, oh, I meant to do that before I signed on. And I completely forgot. Okay, so that's exciting. That's great. And the fact that you could use the Copic inkers for this, I would definitely pick the Art and Fly nibs. I think the Copic nibs would probably be fine, but where the spigot's not quite as long, I would worry about it not sucking up enough ink. That would be my only thing. Plus, the Art and Fly nibs are cheaper. And those can be purchased on the Art and Fly website. I'm not sure if they're on Amazon, but if they are, I'll link them below. I'll link them below anyway, and you can, figure out what works best for your budget, because you know how prices are always changing. Okay, so let's look at the skin tone set here from Arrtx. Now, the thing that I first noticed about this set is that there are a lot of really, really pale shades, and that is something that a lot of people look for. They look for those really, really pastel markers, and I think a lot of companies shy away from doing the really pastel shades because those shades have higher alcohol content. They tend to feel drier sooner. They tend to feel kind of drier just because of the higher alcohol content, and they also tend to dry out quicker. So I was really pleased that they went with a really pale shade. Some of the colors though are so pale that they barely look different from one another, but they like these pale ones. By the way, Copic changed the name of Skin White to like Cotton Pearl or Pearl Cotton, and the Arrtx name matches the new Copic name. But I did notice like this is a yellow undertoned, really, really pale. These are pink undertones, really, really pale. They tend to go, they tend to have a slightly different undertone, but they are very similar. So looking at a set like this, you don't have a ton of dark tones. There are a few, but I would recommend the Arrtx set more for if you're coloring more Caucasian skin or Asian skin, because it's got more of the pink undertones and the dusty rose undertones and the yellow undertones that are in the fairer skin tones. If you're looking for a set, say, that does more like black and brown skin tones, then like the Arrtx skin tone set or the Ohuhu skin tone set. The Ohuhu is a brush tip set. It has a fiber brush nib, but it's a reversible one, so if it does start to fray, you can flip it around. So they're a decent marker too. I like them both. But you can see how these warmer, more orange undertones and yellower undertones, and there are some burgundy undertones, but they have much richer tones. It would be better for darker skin tones. So it depends on really what you're wanting to color. I think that the Arrtx and the Ohuhu would make a really wonderful set because the Ohuhu lacks those super pale tones and those really pinky tones. So I think those would be a really nice set to put together. It just depends. Do you want the bullet and chisel nib that the Arrtx has? Are you willing to, like, if you want a brush tip, are you willing to buy a few brush nibs? I don't even think you even need to do all of your markers with brush nibs if you want to brush nibs. Just the ones that you're tending to blend out more or your most common used colors, probably. Because I will tell you that, especially doing skin tones, I do notice that I would much rather reach for a brush tip marker. I'm really not a marker snob where I'll use whatever, but, and I do find it's a steeper learning curve when you have the chisel ends, but you can get the job done with them. But I do find when I'm doing something like skin tone where I want a really smooth blend, that having the brush tip is quite an advantage. So that's something you might want to think about, but we just tried it and we know the Art and Fly nibs will fit in these if you want to do that. So then you have to think, okay, if I'm going to buy this and I'm going to buy enough brush nibs for it, is it going to make financial sense? Is it still going to be cheaper than a Copic, or am I better off just buying a Copic? And that's up to you. You have to figure out how much of that you'd want to do. I love the fact that you could refill these with the Copic inks. I mean, you can always refill any marker with whatever you want. There's no marker police that's gonna, shut you down if you do that. But I think it's I don't know, I like to try stuff and make sure it works before you go spend your hard-earned money on it, because, I mean, I am in a very privileged position where companies will reach out to me and ask me if I want to review their products. I know that the average crafter doesn't have that that privilege. You know, they've got to rely on advice or their own just kind of taking a chance or shot in the dark. So, I really like the skin tone, especially like if I'm drawing like pictures of my daughters, they have fair skin, so that works out really well. There are a few browns, but they're not, they're more of a, they're more cool browns than warm browns. So that's gonna limit, like if you're trying to do somebody with red hair, if you're trying to do, somebody with a really rich, brown or black skin, it's gonna be very difficult to do that. So I think you definitely would benefit from having both of those sets. Or, you know, reaching in from some of your other sets that have a good earth tone selection that you could mix and match with, because all alcohol markers play really well together. You don't need to go buy every color. Like if you have a great selection of Copics, why would you buy these? You're just going to be duplicating your colors. That doesn't make any sense. So when you add some markers to your stash, it should accentuate what you already have and make your other markers more useful, not replace what you already have, because that's just wasteful. If your markers are good and working order, then get stuff that's going to help them become more useful for you. All right, some of the other skin tone sets I just wanted to compare. Another one I really like is the Art and Fly, and the Art and Fly replaced their 6 color set with a 12 color set, and this is it right here. They just had 6 colors originally, but then they had some duplications between sets, and they switched it so you wouldn't get any doubles if you bought all of their packs of markers, which is kind of nice budget-wise. You could get a pack at a time, and they have really nice high-quality Japanese brush nibs. So this is what you have with the Art and Fly brush nibs. And what did I do? Where's my... Oh, good grief. Did I already lose it? What did I do with my... Oh, here's my Arrtx one right here. So, I mean, there are some similar colors here for sure, but like I said, you could use it when you want the brush nibs. There are some warm undertone browns here, which you do not get in the Arrtx set, so it would augment that a little bit, but it would definitely duplicate some colors you already had, like that Wire 29 is very close to 323. You know, BR 134 is very similar to 326. So there are definitely some, you know, some duplication in colors. But it's, you know, it's all in what you need, what your needs are. If you only color like an occasional stamped image that's got a person's face or a mouse face, or, you know, some cute little animal, hedgehog or something, you just want a little skin tone for the faces, you don't need 36 markers to get that done. This is the Arrtx skin tone set. The neat thing with this is that it does give you some like auburns and some colors that would be nice for hair or makeup. Not really eye color, but unless you had brown eyes. But it does give you a little bit more options there, like golden colors for hair that you could layer up with other browns and earth tones to get variety. And it does have some kind of like warm grays that you can use for undertoning. But this is definitely, I think the Arrtx and the Ohuhu would definitely serve more of your darker complexions a lot better. I feel like it kind of leaves out a lot of the subtler tones in a lighter complexion, and has a lot of pinks that don't really, I mean, you kind of need different, you need a variety no matter what you are drawing. So you know what you reach for markers and what you tend to like to draw. So I think that should be a good guidepost for what you choose. And the other one I wanted to show you here was just the Touch New set of 24. This came out from the Arrtx, or it was sold by the company that sells these markers as well on Amazon. They had the Touch New barrels, which looked like this. This is actually what the original Ohuhu barrels looked like too. Then they went to the I might actually give them to my daughter because I really like the markers. I knew they'd be reliable for her. They went to a style that had a broad end and a fine end like the Alp, but the broad end, the marker was round, but had a big chunky square chip on the end where the chisel nib was. It was a really interesting shape. I liked it a lot, but I gave them to her to use because she needed some markers. And they kind of switched over to the Alp markers. But these were their Touch New skin tone set. Again, it was heavier on the pinks. Did have more of darker tones. Had a lot of yellow tones, but it didn't have a lot of neutrals that had kind of like more of a purpley or you know, when somebody has really fair skin, they almost have like a bluish or a purpley undertone. It's almost like a cooler undertone or a cool pink undertone versus like a coral pink undertone. So, I mean, there's so many subtleties, and you'll probably go for pastel shades in your other markers as well. well. Now, if we look at the original 80 set of Arrtx markers, they do have some of these really pale pastel tones, so you could use the blues and the purples, although they are still a little dark to do skin tones with. But those would be useful, but along with some of the earth tones to get some of the skin tones that you might want. Now, there was only one color that actually was a duplicate. I believe it was one of the beige colors. I'm not sure what the number was here. It was, oh, I don't have that one unfolded. I have so many, so many markers. The thing with their charts, I love that they put them in 107 sand. That was no, was that the one? I thought it was barely beige. It was one of the two. I think it was barely beige that was in both of the colors. But the thing with their charts, you want to do 2 swipes of the marker because it shows up lighter than like your typical drawing paper. I usually swatch on Nina because that's what I stamp on. This drawing paper actually gave me a darker result than what I would have got on the Nina paper because it's more absorbent. So the more absorbent paper, the darker your marker is going to look like. If you're using marker paper, which is like what these charts are on, if I'm using the Arrtx marker paper, it's going to be a little lighter because it's less absorbent. You're getting a thinner layer of marker. It's also using your markers less, so it's going to conserve your markers a little bit. So now let's look at the grays. Now we've looked at the skin tones. I like the skin tones, definitely more of a fairer arrangement. So if you're doing more white or Asian people, that would be a little bit more useful, I think. So let's put those other brands away. We can keep this one out because we've been looking at that. We've been talking about that. So our gray section here, we've got 32 colors, actually 31 colors on a colorless blender. You have the full half tone through 9 grade of cool grays and warm grays. So there's 10 cools, 10 warms, and then you get 5 blue grays and 5 green grays. So it really covers the gamut of the different undertones that you might need. The nice thing about a good gray set is that if you don't have a lot of markers of color, then you can use your grays. So say you're drawing a red sports car and you have like 2 shades of red and you can't get that depth that you want. You can use your cool grays or even your warm grays, depending on if you wanted a cherry red or if you wanted more of a fire engine red. If you wanted a cooler red or a warmer red, you could do an underpainting of just your grays and then glaze over it with your 1 red marker or your 2 red markers and get a lot of depth there because you just pick the gray that's the undertone that you want. I found the warm grays work really well under skin tones, and I think the warm grays would work well no matter what type of skin tone. Even if you're doing somebody that's Caucasian that has a cooler skin tone, still the warm grays I think are a little bit better of a fit. And this is what they look like. Oh, let's see, Arrtx one. Here we go, Arrtx, my goodness. So this is the gray set. So we got your 10 warm grays, you got your 10 cool grays, you got a black, which is pretty neutral actually. You've got 5 green grays, and you've got 5 blue grays. That's a really comprehensive gray scale. Now I did compare them to the Copics, and I found that all the cool tones that I had in Copics, I had like 5 of the different cool grays in Copics, were a good match. For the warm grays though, I found that some of the warm grays were a little browner, especially in the darker colors in my Copic markers than in the Arrtx. So I mean, I think you probably could refill with whatever. If you've got a 1 to 10 scale of gray, warm or cool, you could probably refill, but I wouldn't call them an exact match for Copic except for the cool grays. I think Copic has a French gray line too, and they're a little bit more of like a warm gray, so I think they use something a little bit different to differentiate the warm gray and the French gray. Or maybe I'm thinking of Prismacolor. So many markers, so little time. But I really like this set. There are duplications though, and I made a note of it on the actual swatch here. There are 12 duplicate colors between this set and the original 80 set of the Arrtx markers. So, you know, if you're not somebody that uses gray a lot and you have the set of 80, that might just do the trick. You probably don't need these. I really should use gray more because it's such a good tool for getting your values down and then glazing over it. It would make my life so much easier. I don't know why I just grab colors first. I should really go for my grays. Maybe this will be a good challenge for me to do that. Because I did go in with some of the warm grays to get some more depth of color in Lila's portrait here, because I noticed that I went way too light. Her skin is not this light, but I'd already kind of committed, and so I had to go in with some light warm grays to kind of flesh it out a little bit. All in all, I like the markers. The tips are a little on the hard side, so it does make blending, a little bit less intuitive than a brush nib, but you can get the Art and Fly brush nibs and replace any that you feel would be more useful for you to have in that format. I like them. I love the packaging. It's really handy, especially if all you have the Arrtx Alp markers. They're going to look real cute on your desk and be really easy to access. And they were fun to draw with. They were fun to color with. So there you have it. I don't know how much these are going to cost because they're not available for sale at the time I'm recording this. They're probably in the realm of $1 or between 50 cents and $1 a marker, I'm guessing, because that seems to be what the ilk of these markers sell for. But definitely the skin tone. I like the gray tone too. I like these much more than their 80 set original, which I thought kind of, the color caps were so far off that you had to have a chart in front of you, and it was just kind of, didn't give me anything over any of the other cheap markers that were around, like Ohuhu and a Biennial and other brands like that. But I definitely love the skin tone and love the gray tone. Just know if you're going to do a lot of darker skin tones, I think you're going to want something with more richer orangey undertoned browns. So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this review. And until next time, happy crafting!